Derek is 41. He's not a trader. He doesn't have a Bloomberg terminal. He doesn't watch earnings calls. Derek is just a guy who goes to the grocery store, fills up his tank, and occasionally wonders why his paycheck feels smaller every month, even though the number on it technically went up. Last Tuesday, Derek bought groceries. Same stuff he always buys: coffee, ground beef, orange juice, some snacks for the kids. He gets to the register and the total is noticeably higher than he remembers. Again. Derek assumes it's inflation, or the store, or maybe he grabbed the wrong brand. He pays. He goes home. He doesn't think about it again. But here's what Derek doesn't know. That extra money at the register? That's a tariff bill. His tariff bill. Not China's, not Mexico's, not Canada's. His. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you something that has been buried under years of political noise, press releases, and bumper sticker economics. The way tariffs have been sold to the American public is one of the most successful economic misdirections in modern history. The story is, we're making them pay. The math says you're paying. And the last time America ran this exact play, it didn't end with winning. It ended with the worst economic collapse in modern history. Let's start with what everyone believes. The mainstream story on tariffs goes like this. America puts a tax on foreign goods. Foreign countries suddenly have to pay a penalty to sell here. American manufacturers become competitive again. Jobs come back. The trade deficit shrinks. And the foreign country, the one we're punishing, absorbs the cost. It's clean, it's intuitive, it feels like leverage. It sounds like exactly what a tough negotiator would do. If you believe that, I have a nifty 50 stock to sell you. Because here's how tariffs actually work. And this is the part that matters. So stay with me. When the U.S. government imposes a 25% tariff on imported goods, it is not sending an invoice to Beijing. The Chinese government is not writing a check to the U.S. Treasury. Here's what actually happens. An American company, an importer, a retailer, a manufacturer that uses foreign parts, brings those goods through U.S. customs. At the border, that American company pays the tariff to the U.S. government, right there. Done. And then what does that American company do? It does what every business in the history of every business does when its costs go up. It passes the cost downstream to the next buyer, who passes it to the next buyer, who eventually passes it to Derek. Standing at the register, staring at his receipt, wondering why everything costs more. China doesn't feel that tariff at checkout. Derek does. Let that sink in for a second. Because this isn't a political opinion. This is customs law. This is how it has worked since the first tariff was ever collected. And it's why the Tax Foundation, a nonpartisan research group, found that the average American household paid $1,000 in tariff costs in 2025 alone. Not $1,000 total across the whole country. $1,000 per household. Yours included. Which brings us to the numbers. Because these numbers hit different when you see them laid out. The average effective U.S. tariff rate surged from roughly 2% in 2024 to around 10% in 2025. That is a five-fold increase in 1 year, the highest tariff rate since 1946. The Tax Foundation called it the largest U.S. tax increase as a percentage of GDP since 1993. And the projected cost per household in 2026? $1,300, up from $1,000 last year. Going in the wrong direction. And it's not abstract. You can see it in the price data the Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes every month. Since December 2024, coffee is up 33.6%, ground beef is up 19.3%, romaine lettuce is up 16.8%, orange juice concentrate is up 12.4%, potato chips are up 7.3%. That's Derek's grocery receipt right there, in black and white, from the government's own data. and the federal government collected $264 billion in tariff revenue in 2025. $264 billion. The White House has been talking about tariffs bringing in trillions. The actual number? $264 billion. That's less than a quarter of what was being advertised, and it came entirely from American importers and American consumers, not from foreign governments, not from foreign companies, from people buying stuff at Target and Walmart and Home Depot. But here's the feedback loop that makes this beautiful, right up until it really isn't. Tariffs go up on imported goods. American companies that rely on imported inputs, manufacturers, retailers, construction firms, see their costs spike. They have three options. They can absorb the cost and destroy their margins. They can pass it to consumers and risk losing sales, or they can try to find alternative suppliers, which takes months or years and often costs more in the short term. Most companies do all three simultaneously, which means the cost doesn't just hit consumers at the store. It hits business investment, it hits hiring decisions, it hits capital expenditure plans. Manufacturing employment has already dropped every single month since April 2025. Manufacturing. The exact industry these tariffs were supposed to protect. Down 77,000 jobs from April to December 2025. The tariff that was supposed to bring manufacturing back is currently sending manufacturing jobs in the wrong direction. And here's the part that makes the story even more complicated. Tariffs aren't just a cost on imported finished goods. They're a cost on imported inputs. Steel tariffs don't just hurt foreign steel companies. They raise costs for every American manufacturer that uses steel. Car companies, appliance makers, construction firms, anyone building anything with metal. You protect one industry by quietly taxing 12 others. And those 12 other industries have employees too. This is the mechanism that economists have been trying to explain for decades, and that nobody in a political speech has ever had the courage to say clearly, which brings us to the historical rhyme. And this one is genuinely uncomfortable. The year is 1930. The United States is already in economic trouble following the 1929 crash. Congress decides the solution is to raise tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods. The legislation is called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. Average tariff rates get pushed to between 45 and 50%. The story? American industries would be protected. Foreign competition would be crushed. Jobs would come back. Sound familiar? Before the bill passed, more than 1,000 economists, over 1,000, signed an open letter begging Congress not to do it. They were ignored. The act passed, signed into law in June 1930, and what happened next became one of the most studied economic disasters in modern history. Other countries didn't accept it. They retaliated. Canada raised tariffs. Europe raised tariffs. Latin America raised tariffs. Global trade didn't just slow down, but it collapsed. Between 1929 and 1933, world trade fell by roughly 65%. 65%. American exports got destroyed. Farmers who were counting on foreign markets to buy their crops suddenly had nowhere to sell. Agricultural regions started failing. Banks followed. The Depression, which was already bad, got dramatically worse and dramatically longer. The tariffs didn't cause the Depression, but they turned a bad recession into a decade-long catastrophe. Now, is 2026 the same as 1930? No. The global economy is different. The dollar's role is different. The financial system has safeguards that didn't exist in 1930. And the Supreme Court just struck down a significant portion of the 2025 tariffs under IEEPA, which put a legal ceiling on how far things can escalate through executive action alone. But here's what is the same. Retaliation has already started. Canada announced counter tariffs. The EU is preparing responses. 2/3 of Americans expressed concern in December 2025 about the impact of tariffs on their finances. Almost 70% of Americans predict 2026 will be a year of economic difficulty. And the manufacturing jobs that were supposed to come back with the tariffs haven't come back. They went down. The story being told is, we're winning. The data being collected says something different. So what does any of this actually mean for you? Because this is the part that matters more than any political argument. 1. Understand that tariffs are a consumption tax. They function exactly like a sales tax, except they are less visible, less discussed, and applied to a broader range of goods. If you buy electronics, appliances, cars, clothing, food with imported ingredients, or anything built with steel or aluminum, you are paying tariffs. Budget for it accordingly. 2. The industries most exposed right now are consumer electronics, automobiles, and auto parts, fresh produce and food, clothing, furniture, and anything with steel or aluminum as inputs. If you're planning a major purchase in any of these categories, a car, a home renovation, new appliances, the math has changed. Get ahead of price increases where you can. 3. If you own a small business that imports anything, materials, components, finished goods, stress test your margins at current tariff levels and at escalated levels. The history of trade disputes says they rarely stay where they started. They escalate, then they de-escalate, then they escalate again. Plan for the ride. 4. Watch the retaliation targets. When countries retaliate, they don't pick randomly. They pick American exports that create maximum political pain, agricultural states, manufacturing hubs. The retaliation is specifically designed to hurt the voters who supported the original tariffs. American farmers and exporters are being used as bargaining chips in a negotiation they never asked to join. 5. Don't confuse short-term market stability with long-term economic health. The damage from a sustained trade war is slow, cumulative, and shows up in supply chain decisions, capital expenditure cuts, and hiring freezes, not always in immediate price spikes. The grocery receipt is the part you see. The part you don't see is the factory that quietly decided to pause expansion plans and the 40 jobs that never got posted. And now here's the uncomfortable truth. The one that applies regardless of where you stand politically. Maybe this works. Maybe the tariffs are leverage. Maybe they force a renegotiation of trade deals that genuinely needed updating. Maybe foreign countries come to the table, concessions get made, and in 18 months, we look back at this as a calculated move that costs some short-term pain for long-term gain. That scenario exists. It's real. It's possible. But the mechanism doesn't care about intentions. The cost chain runs whether the tariffs are strategic genius or economic recklessness. Derek pays either way. The retaliation escalates either way, and the Smoot-Hawley parallel doesn't disappear because the person imposing the tariffs had good reasons. In 1930, they also had good reasons. The economists who signed that letter in 1930 weren't political opponents of the bill. They were people who understood how supply chains work, how retaliation works, and how costs flow through an economy. More than 1,000 of them said, "Don't do this." They were ignored, and then they were proven right in the worst possible way. So I want to know where you land. Do you think tariffs are calculated leverage that will eventually force better trade deals and bring manufacturing back? Short-term pain, long-term gain, worth it? Do you think this is Smoot-Hawley with a Twitter account? The same mistake being made again with the same justifications and headed for the same outcome? Or do you think the truth is somewhere in the middle? Some tariffs are legitimate tools. The current version is too broad, too fast, and too politically driven to land anywhere good? Drop it in the comments. Because Derek is still at the grocery store, the receipt is still going up. And somewhere in Washington, someone just put out a press release saying the other side is paying for it. They're not. Derek is. The math says so.